All right, boys and girls, let's get back to it. I have two questions to get us started on our lesson for today. My first question is, who likes to make money? That's what I thought. My second question is, who likes it when someone else takes money from us when they didn't earn it at all? That's what I thought. Nobody likes that to happen. So that brings us to our topic for today, which is talking about copyright laws. Now, copyright laws seem complicated and seem confusing, and so that's why we want to talk about this before we start working on our research so that we know how to do our research correctly so that we are not bothered by copyright problems. So our learning objective for today is given background on copyright and fair use terms. Fourth grade students will conduct research on copyright and educational use of information and describe applications of the laws. Seems like a lot of big words in there. We're going to break it down so that it's easy for us to understand so that we know what we're doing and how we need to do research for our projects. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is copyright? Copyright is a protection for all of us who have written something or who make a living by writing songs or writing books or writing poems. So it keeps someone else from copying your work and putting their name on it and saying that they wrote it or that they made it or created it. The law says that it is illegal for someone to copy or show your piece of writing or your piece of work without your permission. And the only exception to this is the fair use clause or the fair use ideas in the laws, part of the law in the policy. So, if you've ever heard someone talk about plagiarism, that is involved in copyright as well. That's where we just take someone else's work and copy it word for word and turn it in as our work for a project or paper. So when did copyright start? Copyright became important in around the time of 1976, and it was finally made into a law in 1976. It was called the Copyright Act of 1976, and it gave those people who were those creative songwriters and authors and poets some protection for their work because they realized that they were losing money because other people were stealing their work or borrowing their work and making money by using it. So it really gave those creative people some protection for their livelihood, for their jobs. So think about it. Think about all the things out there in the world that people have written. Many of these people write for their job. That's what they do. That's how they make their money. They don't have a regular job like a teacher or a doctor. This is what they do to make money to live on. So what happens if someone takes their work and uses it as their own? You should be able to control what people do with your creative ideas. So that's kind of where the idea of copyright came about and the laws that cover it. So I know that my mom, a few years ago, wrote a special piece of writing or a special reflection that she read at church and that she's used in a couple of other places or events. And she was very proud of that piece of work, and a lot of people asked her if she would give them a copy of it, and she made sure that she went through the copyright process with that piece of writing so that she could protect her work and make sure that no one else took it. So not everything that's out there in the world can be protected by copyright or by laws. So I have a slide. You can see on the slide what kinds of things can be protected and what kinds of things are not protected. Basically, if it's something that's written down, then, or there's a video of it perhaps, then that would be something that's going to be covered by the copyright law. So you can see literary works, music, plays, dances, movies are things that can be protected, but ideas or concepts that you have in your mind or a speech that you didn't write down or something like that is something that we're not going to be able to protect with copyright laws. So, another example that I have is that a few years ago, my grandfather gave me a book, and inside that book was one of his poems. And I know that he wrote poems and poems and poems over the years and gave them to us as Christmas gifts and as birthday presents and put them in our birthday cards. And so it was something special for us to cherish of his. And I know that he went through the steps many times of getting special poems of his copyrighted as well. So what do you do next? What do we need to think about with copyright laws? If you wrote something, it's covered by copyright as soon as it's on paper. So once you get those ideas down on paper, if you want to protect it by copyright and following the copyright laws and make other people follow the copyright laws, then as soon as you write it down, you should be covered. But you can also go through the formal process of getting your work copyrighted, which many people do. Now, once or whenever you die, the copyright for your work that you have done is still good for 70 years after you die. So it's still going to be attributed to you. But once that 70 years goes past, then it's kind of a free use or free an open policy as far as whether your work can be, or open source, I guess it's called, that your work can be used more freely. If you're doing research or a project for school, you're going to read a piece of writing, you're going to read a page of a book, and then write notes in your own words. Do not copy those ideas word for word from the book or the magazine or the newspaper or whatever you're using as a reference. So what I usually do is I read a page and I close the book and I write down what I can remember in my own words that was important, that goes with my topic, and then I know that I'm not copying it word for word. And so I'm following copyright laws. I'm sure you've seen the copyright notification or the copyright symbol before. You can see it on the screen. It's the C with a circle around it. And if you look in a book, it's usually found on the back of the title page. And so if you go to the back side of the title page, you're going to see that letter C in a circle. You're going to see the year that the work was first published listed there. And you're also going to see the name of the copyright owner. And that comes in very handy if you ever want to write to that copyright owner and ask them if you can use more of their work. Sometimes they're very flattered and very appreciative that you wrote to them and asked them for permission to be able to use their work. Now, going along with copyright is a part of that law that's called fair use. And fair use is a part of the law, the copyright law, that allows us to use parts of works for educational or research purposes. So if you're using the work for educational purposes, like you're a student and you're doing a project or you're doing a research paper, then there's a little bit more leeway as far as the copyright laws are concerned. If the work is more factual than creative, that you're reading and studying from and learning about, then there's a little bit more leeway. And there's a policy or an idea that less is more. The less that you use of the entire piece of work, the better it is, and the more that you're following the copyright laws that govern that piece of work. So if one idea that people always say you should think about is if the copyright owner will lose money because their ideas are used in your work, then don't use it. Or if I'm a teacher, I can't take this whole book that I have in my hands and go to the copy machine and make a copy of it and use it for my own purposes, because that person who wrote that book or put that book together, that resource together, is going to lose money because I didn't go buy a copy of their book. I just copied the one that was already here. Another example that I have is a few years ago, I wanted to show my class a movie because we had read a book about the same topic or the same story. And so I wanted to show my class that book. And so I actually had to write a letter to the producer of the movie and ask their permission to be able to use the movie in my classroom. And they very graciously wrote me a letter back and gave me permission to use that movie in my classroom. So I had their permission to show the whole movie as a review or another activity as part of our book. So we're going to review what we've learned about copyright, and we have a scavenger hunt that's going to help us to review. So you're going to get to work with a partner. You're going to follow the directions on the paper to review the rules of copyright. We've given you some websites that you're going to use to be able to find the answers to these questions. And so we want you to make sure that you type things correctly and carefully so that when you are working on the scavenger hunt, that you go to the right websites, because we all know that if you type something in wrong, you may end up in a place that you don't want to be. So work carefully on typing in those websites. So this review is going to show us what you've learned about copyright and fair use, and show us what we might need to go over again so that we understand what we're doing in, as far as taking notes and doing research for our research projects.